what's up, everybody? Darvell back again. So what we're going to talk about now is the actual application process. So I said I'm breaking this down into multiple videos, and what I'm talking about now is the process of actually applying to be confirmed or qualified, rather, to even take the PMP exam. This was the third step on my journey, so to speak. And so what this involves is actually going to the PMI website and filling out the application. So we're going to walk through what is required to fill out the application and some of the key points I just want to share with you from my experience. So if we jump over to the browser window, we again remind ourselves of the requirements for actually getting certified, or rather to apply for sitting for the exam, to apply to sit for the exam. These are the requirements. Again, having that degree for the Set B, because Set B was me, having that degree, having 36 months of experience leading projects, and then having 35 hours of project management education, right? And so what they're going to do in the application is the first thing they're going to ask you about is your academic education. They want to know the school and the years you went, the degree you got. Secondly, they're going to ask you for an account of the 36 months of professional grade project leadership or management. And then thirdly, they're going to ask you for a certification that you completed your project management education. They're going to ask you to provide information on the class you took to get that 35 hours of contact with a professional who's educating you on project management. So to start off, education thing, pretty straightforward. I know that you know where you went to school. You can just put that in and be done with it. The second one is going to be really the second thing is going to be the class. So whenever you complete a class online or however you do it, you should have some evidence that you completed the class. And in this case, I did the Udemy course by TIA Education and Andrew Ramdayal. And so this course here outputs a certificate once it's done. And this certificate I downloaded, I saved that cert. And also their website, TIA Education, if you go over there, they tell you, I think, at the end of the course to go to their website to obtain one of their certificates. And I did that as well. I followed every instruction that they gave me. They say it's very important to follow through everything they do and to make sure that you complete this 100% before you apply, before you submit your application. And I wanted to make sure I had evidence I completed it. So I got not only the Udemy certificate that's shown on the screen, but I also went over to the TIA website. They have a little page where you type in the date you completed or whatever, and you submit your name, and then it creates a certificate to allow you to save for your records that you completed their course. So get that PDF, get this image, whatever you saved, use the information on it to also put into the application for your PMP exam. So you want to apply for using that information. Then the third one is the big one, which is the 36 months of experience. So I told you about the degree. I told you about putting in education. The third thing you're going to put in there is the 36 months of leading projects. So this is very particular. This is the area where I say you put in a bunch of effort, and the effort you put in is formulated around the information you learned in the class. So you're going to describe these projects using language, terminology, ideology, philosophies that you picked up in the class that you took for 35 hours. And that's part of kind of, I would say, a weeding an exam process in and of itself, right? You got to be able to write in the same language that PMI speaks, and you learn their language by going through that class. So you have to understand, firstly, what is a project. That's an important and very clear definition. So if we go to the PMI's website, they have a definition of what is a project. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create unique products, services, or results. It can involve anything from a glamorous event of Fashion Week to humanitarian aid efforts overseas. A project specifically is a structured series of tasks, activities, and deliverables that are carefully executed to achieve a desired outcome. So you see they have different examples here, but in layman's terms, it's something that has a specific intention of outcome, whether it be a product and a service, an improvement in a result. Like, for instance, if you worked on a project to improve quality or to reduce defects, if you worked on a project to clear a sidewalk of, graffiti, if you worked on a project to build a building or make software, you worked on a project to design and release some widget, or you worked on a project to, let's say, improve the widget's appeal and increase market share of the widget, whatever. If you can define it in a box that it started here and it ended here, this was the spirit of the intention, this was the outcome, and that outcome was better or different or whatever, it was a new product, that becomes grounds as an actual project. And so then you need to have 36 months of doing these things. And one key thing is that you don't have to have done it from beginning to end yourself. Sometimes we get brought in the middle of a project and we have to finish it. Sometimes we get brought in at the beginning and start the project, but we don't stay there till the end and we leave, then go on to something else. You can take all those different experiences, whether they're partial or full from beginning to end, you can add them up to 36 months. So what happens is in the application, you have to explain, where did you come in on the project and where did you leave on the project, and explain what you did during that time. And there are these different phases and these different areas of the project, different phases of the project you will learn about during the class. And you have to be able to explain what you did on the project based on the phase in PMP terminology. So if I go over here and we look at an example of what these descriptions need to look like in order to substantiate you have the 36 months of professional grade project leadership experience. This gives you on pmaspirant.com, great website. They give you great examples here on how to write that using the proper language, because this isn't language you talk to your everyday friends or colleagues in. This is language specific to the PMP, or the PMI, Project Management Institute's kind of nomenclature. So when you go through the class, you learn how to write this way essentially. And so what they show you here is there's a phase called initiating, then there's planning, there's executing, there's monitoring and controlling, and then there's closing. Listen, I'll be honest with you, I ain't never heard of a phase called monitoring and controlling on a project that I've worked on. So going through the class is very beneficial for you to even get an application turned in that's going to pass. So what it shows here is for planning, for example, this particular person assessed detailed project requirements along with team members. They led several collaborative and functional meetings between stakeholders and team members. They helped incorporate risk management while testing the program and monitor risks throughout the program execution. And they assessed and tested various malware security programs that safeguarded both structural and unstructured data. Again, this does not have to be for somebody who's going into software development or technology or anything. It can be, construction, automotive, it can be agricultural, it can be anything. This is just an example that happens to pertain to writing some malware software, or rather malware security program. So the key thing here is that there's some words, right? There are words like assessed, collaborative and functional meetings, stakeholders, risk management, monitor risks, program execution. So these are key terms that I just spoke on that you're going to learn in the class. And those are important when you write your descriptions. One other asset that's available from PMP is this PMP application checklist. I use this extensively. This was kind of like very important for me to make sure I didn't submit something that was going to get rejected. So they give some bullet points here. They said, 1, your project entries represent professional project work experience only. You don't include anything like your wedding, like academic research you were doing at your university or college. You don't include no home improvement projects. I would say, I would think my home improvement project was a big deal. No, I said professional stuff that is professional project work. And one note with that, I'll also add that I don't think is clarified here. Professional project work in your mind is often associated with a paid job. But I believe that you can also submit, work that is professional grade that you do as a volunteer for maybe a nonprofit or something. A lot of people are volunteer staff for nonprofits and they have actual real heavy responsibilities. And so there is an area, I believe, where you can submit, not an area, I think that it is grounds, and this is my personal opinion. Like, for instance, I have a nonprofit. If I'm a project leader and I'm working with a team of multiple people to go from A to Z on something, a specific defined deliverable with a certain outcome or what have you, I would submit that even though I'm not paid and it's not necessarily a big corporation. You can be small company, small nonprofit, small community organization, as long as it's professional grade work and it's professional work. I would say with the small community organization, if it's not a company, like mine's a nonprofit, it's a 501c3, I didn't use any of my experience from my 501c3, but if you are working with something that's not really incorporated, I probably would steer away from that if it's not like an actual, federal, or not federal, but a listed entity, but I would use something that is like a listed entity with the state as a actual nonprofit or a company or anything bigger like your actual day job. So just keep that in mind. There's some room there, but definitely don't submit a home improvement project or your wedding. They talk also about some other things in here, but one of the other things is to be clear about is that your projects are not routine operational or administrative tasks and responsibilities. So there's, a clarity point to be made that you're not submitting things that are not truly actually defined projects. They can't be like, submission of janitorial duties on a daily basis or, administrative work of filing expense reports or, even things like, booking your own travel that you do every month to go to, different conferences and meetings. That really won't qualify as project work, despite how laborious it might be and how heavy of a lift some of those things might be on a regular basis. Those aren't project work and they probably would not be accepted. And then additionally, it indicates here that you have to include the number of team members who participated in the project and the budget for the project. So when you start getting into really helping you understand what a project is, the project probably has a budget and it's probably got multiple people on it. It's not something you did alone for free 99, to be honest, which is kind of what they're saying here. This has to have some money associated with it to a degree, and it has to have team members who help you with it. And my examples, one of them, I don't really have a operating budget to do what I'm doing. I don't have something set out forward, but there is a scope in terms of the basic cost that is part of the cost. So that is something that I have to be cognizant of. So it's effectively a budget, but I don't have like I don't have like a line item budget. So you have to think about how do you interpret something to be the budget and put it in on your application, because it's not always spelled out as a budget in layman's terms in your organization, right? And then last but not least, the big important point is that if I am selected for the PMI audit process, I am able to obtain proper verification for the project experience listed on my application. This is important because what's going to happen is, like I said, 1 in 5, 1 in 10 people get selected for an audit randomly. And you need to, in my opinion, this is what I read as being a good practice. And this is what I did. I wrote my descriptions to accumulate that 36 months of experience, and the experience was across multiple companies with multiple supervisors. So I had 2 managers rather that I needed to get them to look at the description I had written and agree that generally this is what I did in case I'm audited, because I will have to give PMI their names and email addresses and let PMI email these 2 people and ask them, hey, can you verify that Darvell actually did these things that he's claiming on his application? And it's important you get advanced buy-off because, one, you can't change the application after you submit it such that, if the manager is like, I didn't like what you wrote there, if you change it, I'll approve it. No, you don't have a chance to change it once it's submitted. And 2, if you get their kind of awareness up front, you can kind of prime them to be ready and to know why this is coming to them in case it does. And so they can respond quicker and they're comfortable and confident in what they're responding to. And that helps streamline any process you have to go through if you're selected for an audit. So I made sure I did that with both of my managers who are relevant to this application for the projects I submitted. So that's the big deal. We got the certificate pulled down for our education. For our class, we constructed the project descriptions, 36 months of project leadership, not necessarily consecutively. These don't have to be things that are back to back, but you have to have accumulated the 36 months within an 8-year period, I believe is what currently is required, at least as of 2024, August and September. And so you get that 36 months and there can be gaps between the projects. But one other thing to keep in mind, and they say it in different places as you're learning, as you're doing your class, as you're studying, you can't have overlapping projects that you get double credit for. So during the overlap of multiple projects, that time period that's overlap, they're not going to give you like credit for 2 projects at once. They'll just give you linear credit for the amount of time you had overall between the beginning of the first project and the end of the second one. Then the overlaps won't give you any extra credit. And then last but not least, getting that buy-off, that advanced buy-off from those managers regarding the project descriptions you're going to submit in case you're selected. You fill out the application, and then they're going to take up to 5 days to actually approve your application. Submitting the application is free. There's no cost. You just have to make an account before you can submit the application. And then when you submit it, they take up to 5 days. For me, they took the entirety of 5 days. I was kind of sweating a little bit because I'm like, I don't want to be audited. I don't want to go through the pain of having to call this manager and asking him to click this button. I don't even work at that company no more. He's cool. He's a great guy. I appreciate him. Real good guy. Great manager. But I don't want to have to bother him. I just want to get through this process and move on with life, essentially, right? So I really was waiting, and that eventually came through, and it was approved without an audit, thankfully. And so if you do get audited, my understanding, like I mentioned earlier, is that basically there's an electronic process to get it signed off and approved by the people in the organization. They can be anybody who's relatively sound in being able to say, yes, you did those things. So manager, supervisor, senior manager, director, whoever, even the CEO, if it's a small company, if they know enough to know that you did this stuff and they can ethically sign off and say that you did it, I think that passes snuff. So make sure you think about who that could be and that you reach out and get their kind of advance awareness and buy off on what you wrote. So those are the things you go through the application process. Like I say, it's really about writing these descriptions. They get a little funky, a little interesting. So you want to be aware of how to use the keywords, and you learn that through the actual class. And so for me, for the course that I took to get the certificate, actually, I started it basically in December 2023, and I finished it in March. I forgot to mention that in the last class or in the last video. The reason I mention that now is that this doesn't have to be a fast process. You don't have to rush, but once you do apply and you get approved, you have 1 year to sit for the exam. You have 1 year to sit for that exam. So that's why I don't tell people, or I don't really advocate, I didn't plan to do the heavy duty studying and the exam simulations and all those things to get ready for the exam. I didn't do that until my application was approved, because if they're going to reject me, or if I'm going to go through an audit and then the audit fails for some random crazy reason, I didn't want to have put in hours and hours and whatever money to get prepared for an exam I can't even schedule. So that's why I go in this order. Do the class, then apply, and then once you're approved, you got a year to actually schedule the exam. And when you go to schedule the exam, that's when you're going to have to pay. So you don't have to pay anything until you go to schedule the exam. And during the time when you're getting ready for the exam, that's when I would recommend you get a PMI membership, probably close to the end of your studying, when you feel very confident, or halfway through when you feel like you're on the right track and you have some idea when you're going to apply to sit for the exam, when you're going to schedule your exam. Go ahead and get a PMI membership. That's going to lower the price for actually taking the exam. And in the unfortunate case that you have to retake the exam, it's also going to lower the price for the retake exam. So PMI membership is worth it, because not only you get that lower price, but you also get access to PMBOK. You get access to other books and documents online as a member of PMI that are going to help you if you need to look some things up and study for this exam. So that's what I recommend. And so I'm going to land the plane here. We're already at 18 minutes, way over my time expectation. I appreciate you for listening to this. Again, I just want to help. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, drop them in the comments of this video. And we're going to move on to the next.